Technique is overrated in basketball. I'll say it. But hear me out on this. You see all the time, get the perfect shooting form. You hear coaches trying to tell good shooters to change something that doesn't really negatively affect their shot, just for the sake of getting it to be that textbook form. But to me, number one, the perfect shooting form doesn't exist. And number two, we don't actually have to keep everything consistent from shot to shot. In fact, that may hurt how we shoot in games. And of course, there are qualities that we'd like to see kept consistent, good arc, fluid energy transfer. But if you watch any high-level game, there are constantly differences in shooting form, shooting technique. And this happens between players and even within an individual player's game. For example, even elite shooters like Devin Booker, Jordan Poole, that technique can change so much. Sometimes their feet are turned more than others. Sometimes the arc is higher than others. Sometimes they're jumping in different directions. Sometimes that leg kicks more than other times. Sometimes that pickup is cleaner or more centered than others. Sometimes guys like Duncan Robinson will catch and shoot without that dip. Sometimes they'll have that huge rhythm dip. And that's because every situation is different. So you may need to differ every shot to fit those situations. One shot you may be more tired, so you need that deeper squat to get the power for it. Versus another time you're more fresh and has to be quicker, so it's a quicker pop into the air.
Figure out when to pass that. We just threw it way too low.
This goes for how much defense is contesting the shot. This goes for how on balance you are. Again, there are always going to be different conditions affecting the shot. So there's really no black and white. And if we can only shoot one way, we're really limited in the amount of situations we can be successful in. And then in between players, you'll notice how much variation there is in shooting forms. Again, we talk all the time about the textbook shooting form. But if you look at all these guys who are crazy good shooters, they all shoot pretty damn different. Various levels of elevation, different timing, different release points, all that. So is there really a textbook jumper form? I'd argue not. Now, of course, you have to develop a certain level of competency when you're first getting started. You need those easy shots. You need perfection. You need that block practice where you're shooting the same shot over and over again, trying to get that shot somewhat consistent. But once you get to a certain point, which is usually earlier than we think, you've got to start getting comfortable with more variation in your technique. If we start this too late, like we often do, we end up being robots who only know how to shoot one way. That's a tough situation to get out of. I've seen it time and time again, and one reason why there are so many players who can shoot the lights out in a workout, not the game, is because we fall into this trap. So the way to apply this, instead of trying to get every shot to be the same perfect technique, try to get comfortable with different types of technique, with imperfection. To a certain extent, of course, but don't shy away from these weird shots. Some where you're fading in all directions. Some where you hang in the air a little bit. Some where you shoot earlier than expected. Some where that shot pickup is a bit to the side of your hip. Some when you're in a deeper joint angle. And then some where you pop off a bit quicker. And the list goes on here. Of course, there are some things that will stay the same, but the best shooters in the world are the ones who can make anything work. And there's scientific research behind this too, but that's a story for another time. So hopefully this makes sense. I'm not saying technique isn't important. To me, it's just overrated considering how much technique can vary from shot to shot and player to player. So instead of trying to develop the perfect textbook form, if you're not a beginner anymore, start to work a little bit more on getting ready for anything. That's just at least how I see it. And it's worked a ton for us on our side. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at ByAnyMeansBasketball for a lot more like this.